By the end of this video, you should learn the skills and the techniques to use this Scream Diaphragm as a cheat code. By the end of the summer, you could truly be one of the best elk callers on the planet. Hey, what's up guys? This is the Scream Diaphragm. So for a long time in this industry, every diaphragm call looked pretty much exactly the same. Now there's been some small changes in the recent years with reed materials and whatever else, and it seems like that monkey see, monkey do. But this call was designed specifically to catch more air, to allow more intense vocalizations, more accurate vocalizations, to be easier to use, easier to blow, more user friendly, to last longer, to be rebuildable. I looked at all the problems of traditional diaphragm mouth calls, and I came out with this as a solution. It has ease of playability, consistency, it lasts a lot longer, it's rebuildable. The list of issues in the design of the traditional diaphragm call were all addressed in this call, except for it didn't fit everyone. So now we have 3 sizes. So you should have a selection of calls that should fit you. We make 3 different sizes. We make a large, a medium, and a narrow frame. You can get a size sampler and test and see what size you prefer. This is the medium frame. I can play the medium and the large pretty well. The narrow doesn't really fit me, so if you've got a narrow palate, hopefully that solves an issue for you. But like I said, we started with the large. For years we only made a large. It didn't fit everyone. Now we make a couple of different sizes. This is the medium. I'll let you hear what it sounds like. So, like I said, I can play the large and the medium. I prefer the large frame, but this is also fits pretty well. Fits in the roof of your mouth. Your tongue goes on the call so that you can elevate the call into the roof of your mouth. And what I try and do is hold my tongue up in the back so that I'm holding the call with the back of my tongue, and then put my tongue against my teeth so that when I open my jaw, my tongue is kind of going to act like the lid on an elk reel. So it's going to hinge. And so that's the whole principle of this call. You can play it without hinging it. I mean, I really tried to use my jaw to... And the call is literally designed around the principle that you're going to... the call is literally designed around the principle that you're going to hinge your jaw and use your tongue much like the hinging lid on the elk reel. So then all you have to do is get one that seals. So like I said, we have 3 sizes. Try the size sampler, see if you can find one that fits your mouth. Then it's about getting a sound out of it. So I think that's where people struggle at first. You need to be able to to put it in the roof of your mouth, to feel comfortable, to seal your tongue on it. So like your tongue needs to be at least as wide as the call. And so I try and flatten my tongue out, push it against my teeth so that my tongue is flat and against the front of my teeth, so that when my jaw hinges, my tongue's kind of flat like that. I'm trying to make it like that. So but you're going to put it in your mouth. Shoot. I'll switch to the large frame. We're going to put it in your mouth, and then you're going to try and hiss. And that's the start of it. So once you can get that sound, then it's about controlling it and pressure. And basically you're just going to have to sit there in your truck or sit there in your house and practice. I really recommend listening to real elk when you're doing it, because there's a million videos out there of authentic elk vocalizations these days, especially with the amount of wildlife photographers that they got camped out in every national park filming, taking photos. There's tons and tons of content of real cow elk. It's really amazing. Influencers putting that stuff out there. I'm literally going to get that hiss to start. And then just drop my lower jaw. I'm not really trying to say a word with that other than just... And my air is going to come from here. So all of your air when you're blowing game calls is generally going to be from these muscles right here, contracting and pushing the air out. So then it's just about controlling the pressure, letting that note drop off there, feeling how you do that. You know, once you can start to make it go up and down, then maybe jump into bugling. But also, to do those estrus cow sounds, you know, one more thing that I'm going to do when I'm playing this is to go... and that's one thing, it really picks up that voice inflection with the three-dimensional reed, and the fact that the reed is actually bigger, and that when you're manipulating the pressure on it, you're changing the size of the reed, but it's still catching that air down the middle of the gut and allowing that voice inflection to really catch and amplify into the reed. So is that really nice nasally buzzy sound for all those really complex cow vocalizations. And then in your bugling, same thing. So and what I'm doing is I'm dropping that sound and adding tongue pressure and then just forcing from here to get that ringing, locating bugle, really naturally sounding elk note. So and then at the end. That's how you can chuckle. Just shorten that note up, and there. And that's why I'm always keeping pressure on my tongue up on the reed. Unless I put it, you know, take it out of my mouth, I'm going to keep constant tongue pressure to keep this call where I want it in my mouth, so that as soon as I breathe here, I'm getting my note out. It's almost like you're just speaking elk at that point. You just breathe it out. I'm just going to inflect my voice, increase my pressure with my jaw, and my pressure from here. I mean, it's like, I don't have to push very hard to do that. But to do this, I'm pushing a lot harder from here. And anyways, that's how you're going to do that. Is you're going to push a lot harder from here at that higher pitch note. You don't need all that pressure here. You're going to be able to flow more air in. But as you cut that ability for the call to let the air travel through it, and you add that pressure, that's how you elevate that pitch. So one more note that I'll make when I'm bugling that's a little bit different is like a it's doing a grunt like that. So I hear bulls that'll just grunt like that. I mean, they'll be at their day beds grunting like that. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where elk will vocalize in different ways, and that's just something that you can add. And I think the more multiple that your elk calling is, the more bulls you're going to get to respond, the more elk you're going to call in, even if they come in quiet. I mean, like, it's just having confidence in your sounds, that you're sounding like real elk, that you're sounding really authentic. You know, I hear a lot of this stuff from tactics. You know, I did a podcast with this guy, and he wanted to bash Will Primos and his tactics and this and that. But I was like, not really wanting to get into a debate in that forum. I think that there's an application for everything. And if you actually heard what elk sound like on public land when they're not pressured, it's a lot like the scenario that they describe in those videos. I mean, literally, like, not going to find it all the time. And, like, I can count on probably one hand the times on over-the-counter units when we were in just the madness, where there's bulls bugling, cows running, cows vocalizing, and you're in unpressured elk in a very pressured environment. But elk don't know when they hear that if it's real or not, if it sounds really, really good. So it can still work. I've called in a ton of elk using those kind of tactics on public land where I believe it and it sounds different. So that's why I just started designing calls. The tactics weren't working with the products that were available because, in my opinion, the products that were available didn't sound very realistic, for one. They were inconsistent to use, for two. Three, you know, just if you had a bunch of buddies, you couldn't just hand them all calls and be like, hey, you guys go sound like a bunch of cow elk. Because if I handed them a couple of my buddies calls that couldn't call, we might as well have just stopped. So, you know, I get that hesitancy from people to embrace new tactics when they've only ever tried the old traditional style products and they've gotten their elk calling techniques from that input. So once I came out with a call that, in my opinion, sounds way better than anything else on the market, that sounds so realistic that elk believe it, that's when they started just accepting the calling as believable instead of, you know, it sounds off, they're going to come hang up, they're going to come circle you, get downwind, never bugle. They're going to do a lot of things that if they really believe it, I've had elk that come straight in, that don't do the circling thing, that come walking right in, and then you just got to be ready. When you add a bow and arrow in the mix, there's always problems that arise trying to get a ethical shot in the trees, in the timber, in the mountains, in the terrain. So just because you call them in doesn't mean they're dead in any means. So just working on your elk calling, sounding more believable. That's the ticket. So anyway, hopefully we've run over some things on the Scream Diaphragm that are really going to help you to pick up how to play it. Like I said, I'm going to go over the basics. It's about getting it to seal in your mouth, finding the right one for your palate. There are 3 sizes to choose from. I suggest get the sampler and try it. See which size you like. Like I said, this is the large. I can play the medium pretty good. The narrow one, I can play it, but I don't really like it. So just, it doesn't really fit my big mouth, and I got a big wide palate in between my teeth. So I never really had a problem with calls that didn't fit. It was more or less like I have to put a traditional diaphragm call so far back behind my teeth for the shape of my palate that it's literally like almost touching my like little uvula thing back there. And that's extremely uncomfortable. These I can use way more forward in my palate. It's not for everybody, but hopefully we've made it for virtually everyone at this point. So try a sampler pack, add some more realism, some more consistency, some more durability to your diaphragm mouth call.